Good evening, welcome back. It is Sunday, April 23rd, 2023. We have a few birthdays here, and we'll go through those really quickly and some cards that we'll show you to go along with a few of those. But first, we got a couple of events. On this day in 1989, DW won at Martinsville. That's not really the significant part of this race. The bigger part of this race, this was the last race for that era's Chevrolet Monte Carlo. They would still be eligible for another year or two, but the Lumina was debuting in the following weekend at Talladega. Yeah, a mid-season body change. Highly crazy times in NASCAR. Could you imagine how the fan base would react now if NASCAR just all of a sudden said, okay, we're going to let Chevy or Ford or Toyota or whoever have a new body in the middle of the season? Yes, that actually happened. And on this date, 1989, DW won in a Monte Carlo for the last race that the Monte Carlo would win until 1995 when they made their return. Also on this date in 2016, Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the Xfinity race at Richmond. That would be his final, so far, career Xfinity Series race, unless he should win in one of his rare one-off starts moving forward. So we have a couple birthdays here that we don't have cards for and a couple that we do, so let's go through those really, really quickly. I believe born on 1931 on this date, Johnny Dodson. He is the father of Barry Dodson and John Dodson, who, of course, runs the NASCAR, is part of the liaison that runs the NASCAR Technical Institute. He died some years back. I looked it up, and I didn't write it down, but he was about 73 when he passed. So it's pretty cool, his connections and such, because he was a racer locally for Bowman Gray Stadium and those tracks in North Carolina. Very well-known name back then. Born on this date in 1952, NASCAR North legend Robbie Crouch. Born on this date in 1961, Chris Neifel, road racing star and IndyCar, part-time IndyCar driver in the 1980s. Now we'll get to the ones that we have some cards for. Born on this date in 1945, he is the 1976 Cup Rookie of the Year, Mr. Skip Manning. Of course, he drove for Billy Hagan's team, but would be released at the end of the 78 season in favor of Terry Labonte. Born on this date in 1964, former crew chief, briefly for Jeff Gordon, Mr. Brian Weitzel. So we do have a few examples of cards that Brian is on. Of course, we have the 98 high gear. And then we have the parallel of that. You can kind of see the difference. This one here is a little more shiny, a little more glossy. Up next, born on this date in 1969, road racing legend and son of former Indy 500 winner, Parnelli Jones, Mr. P.J. Jones. Of course, he had an entry in the 94 Busch Clash by being a second-round fastest qualifier in 1993. There you see the regular and the gold. And by being a second-round qualifier, they were eligible for a drawing, and PJ won the drawing. Here's a 95 images when he was driving in the Truck Series. I think there's a card here. Right there it is. And then the final one we have, he had a brief run for, was it James Finch? I'm trying to see if it says Phoenix Racing anywhere on there. But I do think he was driving for Phoenix Racing. Yeah, it doesn't say anywhere. I was thinking that he was driving for Phoenix Racing at that time in the yellow transportation car. Nonetheless, on our final birthday, born on this date in 1970, longtime Busch Series driver, Jason Keller. And Jason had more sponsors than I could remember, so we'll buzz through some of these. So I got some with him in his uniforms and then some of the cars that he drove. So here he is with the Budget Gourmet uniform. Budget Gourmet was a microwavable dinner. Generally, they ran between 89 and 99 cents, depending on the retailer you went to. And they'd have different things. I mean, it might just be a plain bowl of macaroni, or it could be beef lo mein. It could be any number of different dinners, but they were pretty tasty. Some of them were. I don't think they make those anymore. I'll have to see if they still make those. Of course, he colored the Slim Jim colors for a couple years. He did have WCW's Slim Jim Halloween Havoc on his car a time or two. He briefly ran without a sponsorship, and then kind of had this weird deal with IGA. Then Excedrin moved over to his car after Actually, this was before Jimmy Johnson and all those guys took it over in the 92 car. So he had it for a year or two. Then when his team merged with PPC, they picked up the Albertsons sponsorship. And if you haven't heard, Albertsons last year, I believe, was purchased by Kroger for like $25 billion or something crazy. He had the Miller sponsorship for a while. I don't have a picture of... Now, he did run a throwback to Bobby Allison's car, kind of, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then he ran a McDonald's car for a year or two as well. I believe this was the Rincey Motorsports team. Regan Smith drove this car. Yeah, Team Rincey. And then here's some cars. Early on in his career, he just had oddball sponsorships, kind of like some teams do now. There's a good look at the Budget Gourmet car. And he picked up that sponsor after Andy Hillenberg started the season with that sponsor and failed to qualify for like 5 races in a row. Jason picked the sponsor up at Bristol, had a good run. The Budget Gourmet people said, yeah, let's just go to this car. And they were on there for a couple of years. We talked about Slim Jim. Very basic Slim Jim paint job. It didn't matter what car this was on. This is usually the paint scheme they went with. There's a little bit better one from the front. Then we talked about the time where he ran without a sponsor. You can kind of see it there in the back. Not much special there to see. There was the Albertsons paint scheme. And then there's another look at the Miller paint scheme. Somewhat of a throwback to the Bobby Allison days in the 22 Miller American car. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll be back tomorrow. Rip something. Hopefully pull some cool stuff. So thanks again. And we will see you tomorrow.